Han Hyojin and I were childhood sweethearts, but we spent a lifetime resenting each other. She resented me for taking it upon myself to restore her memories, a decision that led her idealized love to jump from a building. I resented her for breaking her promise, for swearing to love me forever only to fall for someone else after her amnesia. In 10 years of marriage, we were glaciers, the most familiar of strangers. But when I was diagnosed with ALS and the entire city was telling her to file for divorce, Hyojin was the one who, behind my back, made a pilgrimage to a remote chapel, praying for a day and a night on her knees, begging for a miracle that would let me live. On my deathbed, she sat by my side through the night, a silent, hollowed-out sentinel. She pressed her forehead to mine, her whisper a ghost in the room. Minjun, I fulfilled every one of my duties to you in this life. If there's a next one, I hope you won't make me remember. Let me have him. A tear slid from the corner of my eye. I finally understood that I never should have shackled her to me with the bonds of our teenage love. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I found her. This time, I chose to let her go. I would not restore her memory. I would let the love of my youth run toward her new horizon. Ms. Hyojin has lost her memory. She refuses to come back with us, but we've contacted the most renowned neurologist in the country. We can have her memory restored in no time. The conversation was identical, a perfect echo of the day I found the missing Han Hyojin in my past life. Except this time the ecstatic urgency I'd felt then was gone. I shook my head, refusing. I did 2 things. First, I went to the hospital for the most thorough physical examination of my life. Second, I took the confirmed ALS diagnosis to Hyojin's parents and asked to break off our engagement. Hyojin's mother grabbed my hand, her eyes turning a painful shade of red as she shook her head. We can't end it, Minjun. Hyojin adores you. She would never marry anyone else. I didn't speak. I just showed her a photograph on my phone. In the picture, Hyojin was gazing at a man in a merman costume at the New England Aquarium, her eyes soft and utterly captivated. Instead of forcing her to marry a man with a terminal illness, I said, my voice thick, let's maintain the status quo. Let her be with the person she loves. I don't want to be a burden on her anymore. In my last life, after Hyojin vanished, I spent 5 years searching for her. I finally found her living with Park Jae-hyun, the 2 of them blissfully in love. I ignored Hyojin's wishes and hired a specialist to force her memories back through hypnosis. The day her memory returned was the day Park Jae-hyun killed himself. From then on, a chasm opened between Hyojin and me, one that could never be crossed. 10 years of a marriage colder than a Boston winter. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with ALS that things changed. Hyojin cared for me for 7 years, feeding me, bathing me, taking me to healers and shrines, but I knew she did it all out of a wife's sense of duty, not out of love. Forcing back the tears, I choked out the words, there's no future for me and Hyojin. This time, I wouldn't make the same mistake. After leaving the Hans Beacon Hill brownstone, I went to find Park Jae-hyun. When he saw me, he frantically tried to send Hyojin away. He rushed his defense. It wasn't my fault. I didn't hide her on purpose. You and I both know the truth, I said calmly, seeing he couldn't hide it. Jae-hyun's lips pressed into a thin line. He decided to just go for broke, his voice rising with emotion. Lee Minjun, I know she's only ever had you in her heart. The second she gets a memory back, she'll drop me and run right back to you. But I've been in love with her since the first day of high school. All these years, I never got a single glance from her. I finally have this chance. I just wanted her to stay with me for a few more days. That's it. Just a few more days. His voice cracked at the end, a sob hiding in his throat. I listened quietly, but my gaze went past him, settling on Hyojin, who stood just behind him. Her eyes were dark, fixed on me, her entire body tensed like a bowstring. She looked like she was bracing for a storm. The girl who once followed me around like a shadow was now someone else's guard dog, ready to pounce and tear a chunk of flesh from me if I made a single move against Jae-hyun. I couldn't name the feeling in my chest. I only knew that in this second life, I couldn't be selfish and tie her to my side again. I managed a faint smile and said to Jae-hyun, you don't have to be afraid. I'm not here to break you up. I'm here to take you both back to the Han family. Jae-hyun stared, stunned. Both of us? He asked, disbelieving. Yes, I nodded. You're the man she loves. If we left you behind, she wouldn't come with us. My voice was placid. Go pack your things. You're going back to her family's home with Hyojin. Her parents know about you. They won't object to your relationship. A wave of pure joy washed over Jaehyun. He grabbed Hyojin's hand, beaming at her before turning to quickly pack his things. Only then did Hyojin seem convinced I meant Jaehyun no harm. She bit her lip, her posture relaxing slightly. I'm sorry, she said. For a second, I thought you were going to hurt him. Her entire emotional state revolved around Jaehyun now. No one remembered how it used to be. When Jaehyun would pester her endlessly, she would dive into my arms, putting on a show of being aggrieved, urging me to play the part of the official boyfriend and stake my claim. You have to tell them I belong only to you, she'd command, and be fierce about it. She would even scrunch up her face in a mock snarl for me to imitate. We would always end up collapsing in laughter, wrestling on the couch. What a shame. Han Hyojin didn't belong to me anymore. I forced a smile and took them back to the Han residence. When it came time to introduce me, the family hesitated, unsure what to say. I spoke up first. I'm a friend he grew up with. I always thought of you as my little sister. You even promised you'd find me a girlfriend, remember? But then you lost your memory, and it's been on hold ever since. Hearing this, the faces of those in the room who knew the truth twisted with complex emotions. But Hyojin didn't suspect a thing. You got it, she said, joking back. Once things settle down, your little sis will get right on finding you a girlfriend. I was woken in the middle of the night by the glare of a fire. Pushing open my door, I saw that everything connecting me to Hyojin was burning in a bonfire on the lawn. Photos of us growing up, academic awards we'd won together, even the little carved wooden doll she gave me when she first confessed her love. Every single item was crackling as it turned to ash. A sharp pain lanced through my chest, as if a hand had squeezed my heart. Just then, Hyojin turned to look at me. Before, when we didn't have partners, being so close didn't seem weird, she said. But now Jaehyun is living with me, and seeing these things makes him unhappy, so I'm burning them. I hope you don't mind. I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles went white, trying not to let her see how wrecked I was. It's fine, I replied softly. You can burn the stuff in my room. I went back inside, gathered every memento of her, and threw it all onto the pyre. The flames licked at me, sending out waves of heat, but I felt like I was submerged in ice water. For the next several days, the sounds of construction filled the estate. The courtyard of hydrangeas Hyojin had planted for me was ripped out and replaced with roses, Jaehyun's favorite. The glass solarium where we used to play piano and watch the sunset was demolished to build a swimming pool for Jaehyun's exercise. Even the wisteria trellis where we first knew we were in love was torn down to dig a koi pond that Jaehyun wanted. The day they were putting in the pond, Jaehyun stopped me in a yard. He held his head high, deliberately showing off a ring on his finger. Hyojin found the design for this ring in her room. She said she could tell it was meant for a future husband, so she stayed up for nights making it by hand. She proposed to me with it. He wiggled his fingers. What do you think? It's beautiful, isn't it? The design was of a bird and a fish, my old favorite motif. I nodded, my tone sincere. It's beautiful. It looks good on you. Jaehyun's face darkened instantly. But I don't like it. He stared at me, his gaze sharp. We both know who this design was really for. You keep saying you have no feelings for Hyojin, but all her past feelings for you are a ticking time bomb. It makes me nervous. So what do you want to do? I asked. I want. Before he could finish, Jaehyun suddenly lunged sideways, throwing himself into the muddy, freshly dug pit for the koi pond. A powerful shove sent me staggering to the side, and I collapsed on the ground. A piercing pain shot through my ankle. My palm scraped against the gravel, a raw burning sensation spreading in my arms. Before I could even get up, I saw Hyojin dive into the pit like a woman possessed. When she dragged Jaehyun back on a grass, they were both covered in foul-smelling mud and water. Hyojin didn't care about her own state. She frantically wiped the grime from Jaehyun's face, her voice filled with panic. Jaehyun, are you okay? Did you swallow any water? Did your eyes hurt? Are you cut anywhere? It took Jaehyun a moment to recover. He shook his head, his lip trembling as he looked at Hyojin, tears streaming down his face. I'm okay. It's just the ring you gave me. Someone threw it in the water. I fell in trying to get it back. Hyojin, your family doesn't want me here, he said, his eyes red-rimmed. Can we just go back to our apartment? At least no one bullies me there. His pitiful act immediately captured Hyojin's heart. Her expression turned to ice. Who? Who's bullying you, Giant? He pursed his lips and said nothing, just shot a timid, frightened glance in my direction. The accusation in that look was unmistakable. Clutching my now swelling ankle, I spoke in disbelief. It wasn't me. Hyojin's gaze shot toward me, so cold it was like being stabbed with an icicle. I have no reason to steal the ring, I explained, my voice hoarse. You know what you did, Hyojin said flatly. She helped Giant to his feet, then gave a sharp nod to the family security guard. Whoever threw the ring in can go find it themselves. The guard understood immediately. He grabbed me by the arms and tossed me into the pit. The winter water was bone-chillingly cold. The moment I hit it, I started shivering uncontrollably. I tried desperately to crawl out, but a hand pressed down on my shoulder, forcing me back in. Mr. Lee, we can't let you out until you find the ring, the guard said, his voice devoid of any warmth. If you want this to be over sooner, you'd better start looking. I bit my lip and resigned myself to it. Searching through the sludge, my fingertips numb from the cold, fumbled through the icy mud over and over. Filthy water soaked through my sleeves, and my hands grew so stiff they lost almost all feeling. I searched from dawn until dusk. It wasn't until just before Hyojin's parents were due home that my fingers finally closed around the ring. Clutching it in my hand, I dragged myself to Hyojin's door and knocked softly. When she opened it, she looked at me with dark, unreadable eyes. We'll let it go this time. From now on, stay away from Giant. As she spoke, she took the ring and with a flick of her wrist tossed it out the long hallway window into the deep darkness of the night. Jihin doesn't like this design, she said. I'll design him a new one. I watched the ring I'd spent all day searching for vanish into the blackness, and a grim smile touched my lips. Of course, since she had decided the past was a burden she couldn't tolerate, a ring that carried the mark of those old memories had to go. Although Hyojin's parents always had reservations about Giant, they couldn't fight Hyojin's insistence, so holding their noses, they began to plan a lavish engagement party. The party was a spectacular affair, but the guests kept shooting glances in my direction. Poor Lee Min-jun. The woman he searched heaven and earth for is marrying someone else. They were childhood sweethearts, perfect for each other. We all thought they were endgame. Who could have predicted this? If I were him, I'd have slapped that trashy couple. I can't believe he even has the heart to show up. Just then, Jihin, dressed in a designer suit, walked to the center of the ballroom. Hyojin held his hand, the adoration in her eyes practically spilling out. Everyone, she began, clearing her throat, her voice shedding its usual casual tone for one of cool seriousness. I'd like to formally introduce you to. Before she could finish, the lights in the ballroom flickered twice and then went out completely. In the total darkness, the sound of crashing tables mixed with the screams of the guests. The scene descended into chaos. I instinctively backed into a corner, but a hand suddenly gripped my wrist. A cloth reeking of a chemical smell was clamped over my mouth and nose. The world started spinning. I struggled wildly, but in the final moment before my consciousness faded, all I could hear were deafening screams. I don't know how much time passed. Through the fog, I heard Jihin's hushed, furious voice. Damn it! Who told you to make a move at the engagement party? I only told you to kidnap me and frame Lee Min-jun. Who told you to bring him along too? Idiots. Even if you faked it perfectly, you're not getting the rest of your money. Now you've ruined my entire plan. My mind slowly cleared, and I pieced it together. It was another one of Jihin's schemes to frame me, but this time it hadn't gone according to his plan. As I had struggled earlier, I felt a gun holster on one of the men's waists. These weren't the petty thugs Jihin would have hired. What made my blood run even colder was that the leader's voice was familiar. I recognized it as the CEO of a rival company that Hyojin had recently driven to the brink of bankruptcy in a corporate battle. After a long while, the kidnapper finally made a video call. Ms. Han, you have a choice. One is the former lover you grew up with for 20 years. The other is the man you fell deeply in love with after losing your memory. Who will you save? Hyojin maintained a calm facade, but when her eyes fell on a red mark on Jihin's face, she lost her composure. You touch one hair on Jihin's head, and I'll make sure every single person at the Gwangmyeon group goes down with you. I closed my eyes. They suddenly burned with an uncontrollable sting, tears slipping silently from the corners. There was nothing to hope for. I should have known who Hyojin would choose. The kidnapper burst into laughter. Did you really think I was going to give you a choice? As soon as he said it, I was dragged into a large glass tank, my body pressed tightly against a warm one next to me. The tank was then thrown violently into the sea, sending up a massive splash. Rocks were tied to the bottom, and we were sinking fast. I quickly pulled out a small, heavy key I kept on me, gripped it tight, and slammed it against the glass. The current rushed in, and shards of glass tore my arms and legs. I clenched my jaw, dragged the unconscious Jihan out of the broken tank, and fought my way toward the surface. I was nearly exhausted by the time we broke through the waves, but I couldn't stop. I pushed Jihan onto a piece of floating driftwood, my fingers tapping his shoulder lightly. You have to live, I whispered. If you live, her obsession in this life will finally have found its home. I was pushing the driftwood toward the shore when it happened. My limbs fluttered up, my arms went completely numb, powerless. I began to sink into the deep sea. Gazing up at the shimmering surface of the water, I slowly closed my eyes. Fine, let it end like this. Just before my consciousness faded completely, I thought I saw someone reaching for me with all their might. Was it a hallucination? The next time I opened my eyes, I was staring at the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. A nurse rushed over, her voice excited. Oh, thank goodness you're finally awake. You've been unconscious for 2 days. If you hadn't woken up, the hospital was going to stop your antibiotics since you're a John Doe. With a lung infection like yours, that would have been a major setback. Did anyone come see me while I was out? I asked, my voice a rasp. No, I'm afraid not, the nurse said with a sigh. It's so sad. The other young man who was brought in with you just swallowed a little water, and his girlfriend immediately arranged for a VIP suite and hasn't left his side. I was stunned for a moment. Then a small, resigned smile touched my lips. Just then, there was a soft knock on the door and a familiar voice called out, Minjun? My head snapped up. When I saw the beautiful figure standing in the doorway, the tears I'd been holding back finally broke free. I couldn't reach you, so I came to find you myself, the woman said, walking to my bedside and pulling me into a tight hug. She gently stroked my hair. Come on, let's go home, Minjun. My sister Kim Soyoung and I boarded a helicopter. The private jet climbed above the clouds, flying decisively toward a foreign country. I wiped away the last of my tears and gazed out the window at the endless sky, saying a silent farewell in my heart. Han Hyojin, I've given you your happiness with Park Jian. From now on, we will never see each other again. The talk of the hospital was that the famous Han Hyojin had flown in medical experts from around the world just to ensure Park Jian had no lasting psychological trauma from his near drowning. After his final evaluation, Jihan cheerfully suggested he and Hyojin share an apple. Hyojin's voice was tinged with a pleading sort of weariness. It's bad luck to split an apple, Jihan. I don't want to be split apart from you. The moment the words left her mouth, an unrelated memory flashed through her mind. It was a beautiful, sunny day. A gentle breeze rustled the wind chimes by the window, carrying the scent of wisteria. A boy took a bite of the apple slice she offered him, savoring it, then casually popped the other half into her mouth. By the time her and the memory realized what she'd eaten, her heart shattered. It's bad luck to share fruit. You want us to be separated. The boy in the memory stared at her, his eyes wide at her dramatic reaction, but his face was shrouded in mist. She couldn't see it clearly. Han Hyojin, are you really that scared of being apart from me? Of course. And I will never, ever give you the chance to leave me. Hyojin instinctively pressed a hand to her chest, where her heart was hammering from the memory. The version of herself in that vision cherished the boy with an almost obsessive tenderness, as if letting go of his hand would mean spending the rest of her life drenched in a rainstorm that would never end. A sense of panic began to rise in her. Who was that person? Was it Lee Minjun? The familiar unease washed over her again, more powerful than ever before. It felt as though something incredibly important was slipping away from her piece by piece. She thought back to the kidnapping at the engagement party, the moment Lee and Jihan were thrown into the sea. Her heart had felt like it was being crushed by an iron fist. She hadn't had time to think. Her body had simply reacted, diving into the water after them. She had seen Lee pull Jihan to the surface, push him onto a piece of driftwood, and then, like a kite with its string cut, sink straight into the depths. Logic told her to save Jihan first. He was her fiancé. Saving her beloved was the right and obvious thing to do. Lee had his family's people around. Someone would save him. He wouldn't die. But as her body drew closer to Jihan, instinct grabbed her hand and forced it to reach toward that bottomless, dark blue expanse where Lee had disappeared. This wasn't right, Hyojin told herself. Even if they were childhood sweethearts, even if her parents and Lee himself had said he only ever saw her as a sister, Lee shouldn't be this important to her. But what if? What if the person in that sudden memory really was Lee? Then who exactly was he to her? Hyojin shot to her feet. The chair scraped loudly against the floor behind her. Meeting Jihan's confused gaze, she pursed her lips. I'm going to check on Minjun. She'd only taken 2 steps when she felt a tug on her sleeve. Hyojin looked down into Jihan's reddened eyes. Hyojin, if you go find him, does that mean you don't want me anymore? She didn't understand his sudden distress, but she softened her voice anyway. Don't be scared. I just need to ask him about something. Was Hyojin remembering something? If she really went to see Lee, would she still be as good to him as she was now? He couldn't bear to think about it. He could only knit his brow, his voice trembling. My head, it really hurts. Hyojin saw through his act almost instantly, but she went along with it, letting him pull her into an embrace. She patted his back gently while pressing the call button for the nurse. This little drama had played out several times already. Whenever she showed any sign of wanting to find Lee, Jihan would feign illness to distract her. After a while, Hyojin began to see the pattern. Jihan was afraid of Lee. But if Lee was really just her childhood friend, why would Jihan be so terrified? The tangled thoughts knotted in her mind. A wild idea even surfaced, one she quickly suppressed. If she had truly loved Lee in the past, how could he possibly have tolerated her being with Jihan? She silently brushed a stray lock of hair from Jihan's forehead, watching his fluttering eyelids, knowing he wasn't really asleep. Jihan was the man she had chosen, her love for this lifetime. Even if she went to Lee and clarified their past, what would change? It would only hurt Jihan. It wasn't worth it. Hyojin decided to drop the subject of finding Lee, continuing to treat Jihan with the same attentive care as before. But the more she tried to be rational, the more her thoughts drifted uncontrollably. If Lee really was her past love, what did her falling for Jihan mean to him? As her mind wandered again, Jihan pouted, his nails digging into his palms as he put on a complaining tone. Hyojin, you're not listening to me again. Do you not love me anymore? Hyojin snapped back to the present, pursing her lips. Sorry, do you remember what I was just saying? She shook her head honestly. Jihan sighed. I've been having nightmares lately. Let's go to that retreat in the Berkshires for a while, okay? I heard the peace charms they have. They're really powerful. Maybe if I get one, the nightmares will stop. Hyojin was silent for a moment before nodding. Okay. They went to the mountain retreat, a historic church famous for its tranquility. Hyojin got a blessed charm for Jihan. According to the local tradition, for the blessing to be complete, the person giving the charm had to hang it themselves from the highest point of the nearby cliff. I'll be back safely, she said, patting Jihan's shoulder reassuringly. Hyojin placed the charm string between her teeth, checked the safety harness around her waist, and began climbing the wet, slippery cliff face with her bare hands. At 30 feet up, she could still hear Jihan's words of caution. At 150 feet, the wind drowned out all other sounds. At 300 feet, fragments of memory suddenly exploded in her mind. Miss Han used to do all sorts of things for Mr. Lee, planting the whole yard with wisteria, releasing thousands of river lanterns. It was a lot of work for us to clean up. It was the idle chatter of the old family housekeeper. At the time, she'd paid it no mind, but now every word was crystal clear. Finally, she reached the top of the cliff. She let out a breath of relief and carefully tied the blessed charm to an old pine tree at the edge. As she turned to descend, the safety rope at her waist suddenly made a sharp snap. A feeling of weightlessness seized her. Before Hyojin could even scream, she was plummeting like a broken doll. The deep green water of the reservoir below swallowed her whole. In the instant before suffocation set in, she saw the shimmering reflections of a few lotus-shaped lanterns on the chaotic surface of the water. The floodgates of her memory burst open. It was a hazy night, and a sky full of floating lanterns illuminated a young man's tear-filled eyes. Thousands of lanterns drifted on the water, forming a flowing river of silver. You always said your birthday was at the start of the month when you couldn't see the moon. The boy's voice choked with emotion. From now on, it doesn't matter if there's no moon. I'll give you a galaxy. She reached out to wipe away his tears, the warmth of his skin searing her heart. Hyojin struggled desperately in the water, not for air, but to push through the fog and see that face clearly. Her head felt like it was being pierced by 1,000 needles at once. The pain made her curl into a ball, but she refused to let go of that sliver of clarity. After a long, long time, just before her consciousness faded completely, she finally saw him. Those eyes, smiling through tears, belonged to Lee Minjun. Minjun, she murmured as the water closed over her. All her buried memories came rushing back like a tidal wave. The days in London had stretched into what felt like a century. From the initial struggle to adjust to a new, fragile stability, my stepsister Kim Soyoung took impeccable care of me. She accompanied me to countless hospitals, created meal plans based on doctors' orders that were precise down to the gram, and even managed to hunt through all of London Chinatown for the exact dried bamboo shoots and cured pork after I'd idly mentioned craving a specific soup from home. Soyoung's skill in the kitchen was born from hardship. Years ago, after our parents' car crash, I had locked myself in my room, refusing to eat. It was Soyoung, barely an adult herself, who had awkwardly tied on an apron and taught herself recipe by recipe how to make all my favorite foods. Back then, I clung to a doll my mother had left me, crying myself to sleep every night. It was Soyoung who silently packed away our parents' belongings, shouldered the weight of the family business, and shielded me from the world, becoming both a sister and a mother, single-handedly holding my world together. The sense of security I felt with Soyoung was bone deep. I rested my chin on my hand and gazed out the window. The neighbors' kids had built a row of snowmen with red scarves, their round, pudgy forms endearingly clumsy. I couldn't help but laugh. Soyoung, I want to go play in the snow too, I said, looking at my calm, collected sister with pleading eyes. Soyoung never restricted my freedom, but every time I went out alone, the worry she tried to hide in her eyes made me feel guilty. I feel really good today, I added quickly. If you're not busy, will you build a snowman with me? Soyoung put down her glass of milk, a soft smile spreading across her face. Okay. As I bolted for the door, she suddenly grabbed the collar of my coat and yanked me back. Put your scarf on. Before the words were even out, a thick scarf was already wrapped around my neck, followed by insulated gloves, fleece-lined boots, and fluffy ear muffs. Finally, she zipped me into a knee-length down jacket. Only when I was bundled up like a sausage roll did she pat my head, satisfied. Who needs a girlfriend when I've got you, huh? I paused, then said it with deliberate lightness. The care, the protection, even this feeling of safety, it's exactly the same as what I used to get from Hyojin. She looked at me intently, her eyes deep and mysterious, but a faint smile played on her lips. Perhaps Hyojin and I aren't so different after all. After saying that, she bent down to tie the straps of my hat under my chin, as if a profound statement had just been a casual remark. But I was frozen in place, feeling as though something had just struck me in the chest. What did Soyoung mean? The same as Hyojin. That one day she would forget me too? That she would hurt me for someone else? No. I immediately dismissed the thought. Soyoung wasn't Hyojin. She would never do that. But her cryptic comment still left me feeling unsettled. She was always like that, speaking in riddles, leaving me to guess her meaning. I stomped out into the yard, grabbed a snow shovel, and jabbed it in the ground a few times, pretending the snow beneath my feet was Soyoung's enigmatic face. Clang! The shovel suddenly slipped from my grasp and fell with a dull thud. I bent to pick it up, but my arm froze midair, refusing to move. Before I could call out, I was enveloped in a warm, soft embrace. Leaning against Soyoung, I could hear the steady, strong beat of her heart, a reassuring rhythm. ALS. The doctors called it an incurable disease, one that could only be managed with medication and care. The muscles weaken, stiffen, and atrophy until eventually you feel frozen in ice, where even breathing is a luxury. Lying in bed, I watched Soyoung tuck me in. I still had the presence of mind to joke. It was too cold outside. It froze me solid. Soyoung leaned over me, her voice trembling slightly. That's right. When the weather gets warmer, you won't be frozen anymore. This time it was my turn to be silent. After a long moment, I spoke softly, my tone serious. Soyoung, in my condition, I'm not fit to be anyone's husband. And I'm definitely not fit to be anyone's lover. It was a gentle refusal of a love I could no longer bear the weight of. But Soyoung simply lifted her head, leaned closer, and looked directly into my eyes. The emotion churning in their depths was so intense it startled me. I had been oblivious for so long. Her expression suddenly softened, her tone as calm as if she were discussing the weather. To me, if you choose me as your sister, I'll care for you as family. If you choose me as your partner, it only means adding a wife's love on top of a family's devotion. It's not so different. She paused. It's just that I'm greedy. I want to hold more than one place in your heart, Minjun. Don't say no just yet, she pleaded, her eyes filled with a careful hope. You have to at least let me try. Let me see if I can do it. Han Hyojin was rushed to the hospital after her fall from the cliff, and miraculously her life was saved, but the doctors were baffled. Her vitals showed she was out of danger and her brain activity was unusually high, not at all consistent with a coma patient, yet she showed no signs of waking up. Her parents rushed to the hospital. Seeing their daughter lying motionless on the bed, they couldn't stop themselves from lashing out at Jihan, who was keeping vigil by her side. I told you he was a curse. But Hyojin was so bewitched by you she couldn't see straight. If we hadn't listened to Minjun back then, if we hadn't given up on finding a doctor to restore Hyojin's memory, we never would have brought you into our home. None of this would have happened. They sank into their chairs, their voices filled with regret. When Hyojin was with Minjun, things like this never happened. We should have never listened to Minjun. Minjun. The name echoed in Hyojin's mind with a dull, aching familiarity. A slender, bright figure emerged from her memories. The young man stood amidst a yard full of hydrangeas, smiling at her. Hyojin, the orchids in the solarium are blooming. Let's go see them together. Hyojin watched herself walk eagerly toward him, but the moment she touched him, he shattered into a cloud of butterflies that flew away. His sad, clear sigh drifted through the air. Hyojin, there's no future for us. Minjun. In the hospital room, Hyojin's eyes flew open. Her cry tore through the silence. Hyojin, you're awake. Jihan was ecstatic at first, then burst into tears. You're finally awake. If you hadn't woken up, I don't know what I would have done. Your parents would have hated me for the rest of my life, and I would have died of guilt. I never should have let you go hang that charm for me. It's all my fault. Hyojin listened quietly, her gaze fixed on the face of the man she had treasured during her amnesia. Her voice was hoarse when she finally asked, "Where is Lee Minjun?" Jihan froze, then bit his lip, making one last-ditch effort to poison her against him. You're still asking about him? You've been in the hospital for so long, and he hasn't come to see you once. That's the kind of man he is. He's there for you when you're on top, but the second you're down, he's nowhere to be found. Why would you even think about him? If you ask me, he's not that kind of person. Hyojin cut him off, her brow furrowed, her tone one of unshakable certainty. She knew what kind of person Minjun was better than anyone. He's not visiting because he's angry with me. Remembering all the things she'd done to Minjun while her memory was gone, she felt as if an iron clamp were squeezing her heart, suffocating her. Almost frantic, she threw back the covers and strode toward the door. Jihan grabbed her from behind, holding her tight. No matter how slow he was, he could see the clarity in her eyes. He knew she remembered. It was happening again. The moment Lee Minjun appeared, there was no room for anyone else in her eyes. He couldn't accept it. He choked back a sob, lowering himself. Hyojin, I'm sorry. I was wrong about Mr. Lee. Maybe he had a good reason for throwing my engagement ring. And the kidnapping at the party? It wasn't his scheme. Just, your injuries are still serious. When you're better, I'll go with you to apologize, okay? Hyojin could easily see through his manipulative retreat. She pried his fingers off one by one, her voice as cold as ice. The people who kidnapped us at the party were not hired by Minjun. If he truly wanted to hurt you, he wouldn't have saved you when you were both thrown into the ocean. He nearly drowned because he was saving you. She closed her eyes, a hint of impatience in her voice. Jihan, I don't want to argue about why I ended up with you when I had amnesia. The expression on Jihan's face shattered. What did you just say? Hyojin gave him one last long look, shook off his hand, and walked out. If you go to him, then what am I? Jihan screamed after her. The words pierced her ears, but Hyojin didn't turn back. An unspeakable terror washed over her. It was a question she had asked herself before she regained her memory. If Minjun was her past love, then what did that make her? The version of her who fell for Jihan? To him, a traitor, an unforgivable one. She couldn't bear to imagine Minjun refusing to forgive her. This was the man she had cherished, the man she had sworn to marry in the past. She would ache if he so much as frowned, and now she had been the one to wound him so deeply. At the entrance of the Han family home, Hyojin knelt before her parents. "Mom, Dad, just tell me where Minjun is. I promise, I'll make it right." Enough. Her mother couldn't take it anymore. She pulled Hyojin up by the arm, her eyes filled with a sorrow Hyojin couldn't comprehend. "Minjun broke off the engagement with you right after you lost your memory. Even if you make it right, what's the point? He's not coming back." Her voice dropped, filled with an endless exhaustion. "He didn't want to be a burden on you. That's why he convinced us to give up on restoring your memory. That's why he chose to leave the country." A burden. Hyojin repeated the words as if they had burned her. Her mother closed her eyes and took a deep breath, finally telling her the whole truth. "Minjun didn't want us to tell you, but you deserve to know the sacrifice he made. Right after we found you, he was diagnosed with ALS. He came to us with the diagnosis to end the engagement. He said that right now your heart only had room for Jihan. He said that while you still didn't remember him, it was best for him to leave and let you two be happy. He didn't want to drag you down for the rest of his life." A deafening roar filled her head like a thunderclap right next to her ear. Hyojin froze, her eyes vacant. ALS. Let them be happy. The words were like ice-coated needles stabbing into her heart. The phantom smell of a bonfire seemed to rise from her blood, seeping into every limb. Her heart felt like it was being torn in two, the pain so intense she could barely stand. How could he? Minjun had promised her forever. The world spun, her vision went black, and she tumbled down the front steps of the house. In the last moment before she lost consciousness, she gazed at the shallow koi pond in the yard and had the distinct, hazy feeling that it was supposed to be filled with hydrangeas. The next time I saw Han Hyojin was on a day I went to the clinic to pick up my medication. She was much thinner, with faint bluish circles under her eyes, a clear sign of many sleepless nights. "What are you doing in London?" I asked, glancing behind her. "Aren't you here with Jihan? Where is he?" Hyojin's eyes widened as if she had heard something excruciatingly painful. "Minjun, I came to apologize to you." Seeing her expression and hearing that familiar name, it took me a second to process it. She remembered, but I didn't understand why she was here apologizing. By all accounts, she should be living her happily ever after with Jihan. I was silent for only a moment before shaking my head gently. "You don't have to apologize to me. I know how important Jihan is to you," I said, my voice calm. "So when I decided to let you two be together, I never planned on holding any grudges." Hyojin's mouth opened, but no words came out. She instinctively reached for my wrist. "Minjun, you're just saying that to hurt me, aren't you? You hate that I chose Jihan when I lost my memory. You're angry that I blamed you and hurt you for his sake. So you're saying this to make me miserable, to watch me suffer, right?" At that moment, all the apologies she had prepared vanished, replaced by an overwhelming panic. But before her hand could even touch the sleeve of my coat, it was swatted away by a force from behind me. "Han Hyojin, how dare you show your face here?" Soyoung's voice was frigid, her gaze like ice. I saw the danger in her eyes and quickly took her hand, looking up at her with a pleading smile. "Soyoung, is the car ready? We should go." I started to lead Soyoung away, then glanced back at Hyojin, my tone laced with a weary finality. "Hyojin, I'm really not angry with you, and I don't need your apology. You and Jihan living a happy life together, that's the best reward you could ever give me. And I meant it. In my past life, when I was diagnosed with ALS after we were married, it was Hyojin who stayed with me, who cared for me. Even if it started as a sense of duty, she was by my side until the very end. Many of the choices I made in this life were to repay that debt. Since I was the one who chose to let her go, there was no room for resentment. I was content with my life now. I didn't want it to be disturbed. On my wedding day with Soyoung, we received gifts from Hyojin's parents and other friends, along with an anonymous monumental transfer of assets. It was Hyojin's entire stake in the Han Family Corporation. Sent with the stock contracts was a small carved wooden sculpture of two dolls sitting on a mysterious swing. Soyoung, in a fit of jealousy, threw it out. I didn't pay it much mind. Guided by the efficient, I looked calmly into Soyoung's eyes. Lee Minjun, take you, Kim Soyoung, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part. As the words settled, the light in someone's eyes in the back of the church went out completely. During the countless days she had spent watching over Minjun from afar, Hyojin had asked herself more than once, should she just kidnap him, keep him by her side by force? He might hate her for it, despise her, but at least he would be hers. The possessiveness would swell into a tidal wave whenever she saw him smiling so brightly at Soyoung. But every time, the image of Minjun helpless during one of his episodes flashed in her mind. Hyojin's hands would tremble, and she would lower the phone where a message was already drafted. She knew better than anyone that Minjun hated when people saw him in that vulnerable state. Yet he never pushed Soyoung away during those times. He would even lean into her embrace, seeking comfort. When he was with Soyoung, the light in his eyes and the smile on his lips were relaxed, free, without a trace of darkness. She couldn't take that happiness away from him. Hyojin remembered the moment she first fell for Minjun. All she had wanted was for this boy to keep smiling that sweetly forever. That was all. Now Minjun didn't love her anymore. She couldn't give him the joy he wanted, so the least she could do was not destroy the happiness he had found. Let it be. She had told herself that 1,000 times. She would watch over him until his wedding day, see him find his own happy ending, and then she would make a graceful exit. But now, on the actual day, Hyojin finally understood the heart-tripping agony of what she had lost. If only she hadn't lost her memory, Minjun would have been her husband. If only she had been able to break free from Jaehyun's manipulation, perhaps Minjun would have waited for her a little longer. In the end, she had no one to blame but herself. She clutched the wooden dolls that Soyoung had discarded, which she had retrieved from the trash, and fled the wedding like a deserter. After returning to the States, she didn't go back to her family home. She went straight to the mountain retreat where she had fallen from the cliff. Hyojin bowed deeply to the abbot. If I were to trade the rest of my life for a chance at another, is it possible? The abbot looked at her with compassionate eyes, his voice calm and even. My child, the cause is the effect, and the effect is the cause. You pray for a next life, but how do you know that this life is not the one you prayed for in your last? At first, Hyojin didn't understand the depth of his words. Not until an ordinary night, weeks later. She was scrolling through Instagram and saw a new video Minjun had posted. A puppy. A fond smile was still on her lips when a heavy wave of drowsiness washed over her. In a daze, she saw a completely different life unfold, as if she were a spectator. In that life, her parents had forcibly brought her home, and she regained her memory much sooner, marrying Minjun without issue. Shortly after the wedding, Minjun was diagnosed with ALS, but he didn't see it as a burden like he had in this reality. Instead, he smiled and said they would face it together. She heard herself telling him, "Our love is strong enough. We won't be defeated by hardship. Whatever mountains or seas lie ahead, I will cross them with you." The words were full of devotion, but only the spectator Hyojin knew that as she said them, her heart was already a pool of stagnant water. Park Jaehyun was dead, and her kindness to Minjun was nothing more than the fulfillment of a duty. She had carried Minjun on her back, making pilgrimages to every mountain shrine, tracing the word for life on ancient stones with his hand, praying for his health and longevity. But no one knew that after every mountain she would find a hidden place and write a prayer for the dead, for Park Jaehyun, hoping that in his next life he wouldn't die for her, hoping they could have a different ending. After Minjun passed away, she burned all the prayers she had written for Jaehyun. In the glow of the massive fire, a serene, powerful voice echoed, "As you wish." The scene shifted abruptly. It was Minjun, reborn, calmly telling his people to call off the doctors who were meant to restore her memory. Hyojin, gasped Hyojin. She jolted awake, breathing heavily. The vast darkness of the night enveloped her. Her limbs tingled as if gnawed by ants, a soul-deep tremor shaking her to the core. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat deafening. She dazedly placed a hand over it, where the pain had long since turned to numbness. Hyojin tried to smile, but the expression froze on her face as her eyes began to redden. So this was all what I asked for. It was she who had been blind, unable to see her own heart's truth, unable to solve the puzzle of her own love. Every bitter consequence was of her own making. The next morning, Hyojin went to the mountain monastery again and calmly told the abbot, "I want to take holy orders." The abbot clasped his hands together. "As you wish. My name. May I choose it myself?" "You may. Then let it be Leona." Lee was for the man she had lost, Leona for the one she had prayed away. For the rest of her days, she would sit before a flickering candle and a silent statue, praying for his soul. She would pray that in his next life, Lee Minjun would be free from sickness and sorrow, that he would be safe and sound, that he would find someone true and live a life full of joy.